Okay, quick music disclaimer here. I do not own the rights to this music, which belongs to the rightful owner, who is the intoxicating mind of Dr. Frankenstein. So he made my intro and my outro, and I hope you guys enjoy. Check them out on Spotify and YouTube, and no copyright infringement is intended. Have a good day.
A clear choice of good versus evil, of right versus wrong.
Twisted Tales.
Welcome to Weirdstale.
Are you a weirdster like us?
Do you love the paranormal, true crime, mysteries, and stories of the just plain weird?
We're sisters, Melissa.
And Stephanie.
One of us is obsessed with telling the other every weird story she can find. Every week on our show, Weirdstale, we have a story that's sure to leave you wondering.
You might even let out a welp.
Join us in Weirdstale every Thursday for a new episode of Sisters Speculating on the Strange.
Find us in your podcast app and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Weirdstale Podcast.
And TikTok at Weirdstale Pod.
What's weird with you?
Okay, welcome back to Twisted Tales, folks. I know it's been a bit busy here. I was just getting my safety tickets and shit done, going on to bigger and better things. It just sucks right now, but whatever. Just been off work for a little bit, but took some time to, help out the old mental health and shit, right? I mean, fuck. Working a job for 14 and a half years. It's a long fucking time. You think you put in work and all that shit, right? But then, you're just fucking underappreciated anyway. But sometimes that's the way life goes, People don't see your fucking appreciation and shit. Oh well, somebody else will. And that's all that matters. Now, this next episode is going to be about some animals here that attack their owners. So, it's not going to be a very good time or anything like that, but, having a pet, it's a huge responsibility. You have to make sure that they have a good life, they're well kept, they have an active life, and each pet brings with it a set of different guidelines and stuff, right? You got to follow to make sure that the pet has a healthy and a happy life. But I'm talking about the average dog or cat or what have you, right? Now, some people do a lot of weird shit. They'll go out and get these weird exotic animals sometimes, right? That's cool and all, but some are fucking beasts that you just can't tame. No matter how hard you try. And sometimes they fucking attack you. Tonight's tale, we're going to talk about Kelly Walz and her animal that she got actually turned on her. So, I guess we'll start with this tale. Now, Kelly Ann Walz is a woman who lived in Ross Township. And this is a township up in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, United States. Now, this is adjacent to the northern border of Pittsburgh, and the population over that way is a little over 33,000. She was born up in Methuen, Massachusetts, on May 10th, 1972. There's that word again. And this is a 60-kilometer city, so it has a population of a little over 53,000. So, big enough, right? Now, the whole place lies along the northwestern edge of Essex County, and it was incorporated into a city back in 1917. It's actually named after this dude named Sir Paul Methuen. Now, this dude here was a politician type dude. He was born in 1672, and he died in 1757. Now, Kelly was the daughter of Kenneth and Patricia Hume. Now, they lived up in Atkinson, New Hampshire. So Kelly graduated from the Methuen Public School up in Methuen, Massachusetts. She continued on with her education and graduated from the Lowell Academy School of Hair Design. and this is up in Lowell, Massachusetts. So she was a hairdresser, so this is what she really enjoyed doing at this academy here. And while here, students are encouraged to explore their creative process, their talents, and other such abilities here inside a judgment-free atmosphere of like-minded individuals. She was also a member of the 4-H Club. So the 4-H is a United States-based youth organization. Now, this is based out of the United States. There's many branches elsewhere. And what they do here is they engage youth to reach their fullest potential while advancing the field of youth development. This actually originated in the early 1900s as the Foursquare Education. And Kelly had also rode competitively in Massachusetts. So this is where riders and horses are judged on stuff like their skill, their performance, their athleticism, kind of like different events like dressing, there's endurance, show jumping, stuff like that. Now, Kelly volunteered at the Faith Christian School in Roseto. This is located up at 122 Dante Street in Roseto, Pennsylvania. And this would be like the same school that her kids would go to as well. Now, Kelly, through years, became a member of the New Covenant World Outreach Church. This is up in Broadheadsville. So it's here that they provide a quality Christ-centered education for children of Christian families. So she was a bit of a churchgoer. So let's fast forward here. So Kelly married a man named Michael who was born in Chicago, Illinois. So over the course of the marriage here, they had this huge fucking place and it sat upon a hilltop. Now the couple had 3 unusual pets within their home. So there was a Bengal tiger, an African lion, and a black bear. All were kept in separate cages. At times, you'd hear this lion roar, and that would actually scare the shit out of some people, right? I mean, especially people coming in from out of town, hearing it for the first time and all that, right? But all these animals were well contained. Even like spectators and stuff, there was a sign down at the bottom of their house there that said, "Enter only if specifically invited." So that was around the household there. So the black bear cage that she had was 15 by 15 feet, purely made of steel, concrete, and all that. However, building an enclosure that's like actually impenetrable by a bear is actually quite difficult. I'll just talk about that for a sec. Now, sturdy structures like that have minimal gaps, openings, they're kind of harder for bears to get into. Kind of makes it less likely that a bear will spend the energy to fucking break into and damage the structure. But I mean, depending on how pissed off they are, it could happen, right? They're fucking bears. Bears are really strong. Now, there is one requirement that someone must meet in order to be granted a Game Commission permit to own exotic wild animals as a pet. Now, this is to have a 2-section cage to house the animal. And the couple didn't have this. But they did a recent state inspection here back in 2007, and they didn't turn up any problems. Now, the Gaming Commission and all that were like kind of gung-ho to check this whole place out, right? Make sure everything was durable and whatnot. Because the Gaming Commission actually, when they give these permits, they require these cages to be like durable, weatherproof, and of certain sizes. It depends on the animal, though, that's being housed. So I'm sure it was all up to code and shit like that, right? I mean, like I said, bears are incredibly strong, powerful animals. Their massive shoulders give them the ability to like bend and pry metal and all that. And an example of like what's required of the cage that he needs, this is called a bear-resistant enclosure. So what these animals need is a bear-resistant enclosure. So this shall be an enclosed structure that's made of metal, wood, stone, brick, and concrete. Or maybe it's just made of the equivalent sturdy materials, right? It must consist of 5 sides and a secure door or cover. So the sides of the structure should extend to the ground and the door. It should not have any more than a 2-inch gap along the bottom. So the door must have a latching device here of sufficient design and strength to prevent access by wildlife. So the couple had the bear since the year 2000. Now his name was Teddy. I'm sure that was because, you get it, he was a bear, teddy bear, get it? So the homeowners had a permission to also keep a Bengal tiger and an African lion here. And the property was obviously checked out every now and again, so it was routinely passed inspection here. It had no violations. Everything was good to go. They had all these exotic animals, and they just kept them as pets. Now, one doesn't really need extensive knowledge of exotic animals or wild animals or anything like that to be granted a Pennsylvania Game Commission permit to own such animals as a pet. But I mean, I'm sure if you know a little bit what you're doing, it's probably a good fucking thing. Now, nobody had an issue with the animals. All of them were very well maintained. They were looked after. They were groomed properly. All the cages were top notch, cleaned and everything. And I'll switch over to her husband here for a sec. Now, Michael, he had a love for cold-blooded creatures from around the time he was about 7 years old. So his grandmother once took him to the zoo here, and this was during a reptile show. He had volunteered to have a snake draped around his neck, and he's been a big fan ever since. But originally, he was a salesman back in the 1990s. But having such a love for animals, it kind of veered him in another direction. Now, Walz and his partner, Gary Lee, had incorporated the world of reptiles back in 1988, and then eventually he got into that full time and then quit being a salesman. So the two men had this huge goal of creating and entertaining an educational program for school children. So they would work with different zoos all over, a bunch of universities, and other wildlife professionals and agencies. So schools would actually ask this dude to come by. They asked for him by name, right? That's how popular he was around the area. So he would be invited in to give this assembly programs and stuff. He would show up at festivals, lectures, scout meetings, different things like that. And I'll just give a couple examples of some of his presentations here. This would be where he would tell stories, where he talks about where the animals come from, what they eat, what their role is in the animal kingdom, and all their contributions to medicine and different shit like that. So it was here in the 1990s where his passion for reptiles actually became his fucking top priority here, and he took care of them and actually learned how to breed them over time. Now, through his years, he worked in sales, like I said, but eventually his full-time job in sales conflicted with his pet reptile business. And then he just decided to fully focus on that for cold-blooded critters and whatnot. And back when he was in elementary school too, Waltz was actually combining living things with money making and stuff. So he would raise chickens. He would sell the eggs to his paper route customers and stuff. And even in school, after he graduated from Easton High School, he attended Northampton Community College. So this is here where he would actually work as an educator who would use reptiles to kind of explain the environment and the earth in general and stuff like that. Everything reptilian. So Walz, like I said, worked various jobs. He sold shoes, automobiles, computer equipment, everything like that. And this guy was just big into animals, even growing up too. I think he had his Eagle Scout award when he was 13 years old. And an Eagle Scout rank, I mean, that's top notch, right? That's the highest rank attainable within the Scouts. And a couple quotes that this guy had, when he mentioned animals, this guy was passionate. He said, "You have to do what you love in this world. And if you do a good job, things kind of all work out." Now, Michael spent 30 plus years doing hands-on work with animals, reading, researching on his own. But since he didn't have the formal degrees and everything, he did know a hell of a lot of knowledge about reptiles over the years. Now, the science of breeding reptiles is called herpetoculture. And then he got his license to house the animals there sometime in 1994. So it was due to this interest in the subject of reptiles that Kelly and Michael would meet. Now, Kelly was working at a New Hampshire animal breeding facility at the time, and then the two ended up getting married in the year 2000. So they had a huge place. This was 8 secluded acres in rural Saylorsburg. It's a hilltop menagerie, as it's called. Now, a menagerie is a collection of captive animals, frequently exotic ones. Now, this term was first used in 17th century France, so this referred to the management of household or domestic stock. And during the time that they owned this place, like the township had received no complaints about the animals that were kept at the property here. Now, there was a zoning officer dude here who always used to check this place out. He said there was like one noise complaint, but that was against the previous property's owners and not the current ones. Now, some of the larger mammals that he considered his pets, they were bottle fed. He raised them. And at one time here, Michael had even had a huge lion hop up on its 2 legs, so its hind legs, in its cage, and he walked over and kind of gave him a kiss. So some of the animals were pretty friendly, like all of them were, that nobody had any issues with them. And at one point, they even raised a bunch of raccoons and skunks and stuff here. Now, he made mention that skunks make really good pets. They can also be litter trained. It just takes a little bit of time to do this process. Now, the two would work together with wildlife photographers, television documentary producers, so the couple did a lot of cool things, and that's pretty badass. Now, over the course of the years that they had this place, they did a lot of awesome work within the community, and elsewhere, mind you. And they were dubbed by the neighbors as fantastic pet owners. Now, they had passed every inch of every inspection that ever came up regarding the property. Nobody complained about them. And even people that were unsure were actually allowed onto the property to check out the scene to make sure everything was tip-top, set people at ease and stuff. And like I mentioned, if you wanted to find the house, there was that sign at the bottom there that said, keep out, enter only if specifically invited. Now, the animals that they had were licensed by the state to be kept as pets. The black bear that she adored mostly was raised from a cub. He was in captivity. He never grew up in the wild or anything like that. He never hunted for his own food. He never got to be wild. Bears in captivity lack the opportunities for their natural behaviors and stuff. But the two had shared this unbreakable bond. So it seems, right? Even though the bear grew up domesticated, they still have their natural instincts about them. Black bears are fucking pretty big dudes, but they're not as big as grizzlies though. Black bears can have distinguishing features, right? Their size, this difference from grizzly bears and all that, different characteristics, different behaviors. But grizzlies are much larger than black bears. Grizzlies have a prominent shoulder hump. Black bears don't. Grizzlies have longer, light-colored claws, while black bears have shorter, kind of dark-colored claws. Both can be different in colors, so you can't really, sometimes you can't specify them by their colors because every bear is pretty much different colors, right? Light, dark, what have you. Just a couple things to keep in mind, right? It might be hard to differentiate. And lastly, grizzly bears possess a bite force of approximately 1,000 psi, while black bears have a bite force around the 800 psi mark, so pounds per square inch. And their teeth are roughly 2.5 inches in size. Pretty big teeth. Now, the bites from a bear are capable of crushing bones and tearing through skin like it's fucking butter. Now, the saliva, can also cause an infection to a wound if you're attacked or you're bit, whatever, right? So you got to get that looked at if you survive. So there's a few facts that I hope you guys can bear. Haha. Now, after many years of housing the animals, making sure they're fed on time, I mean, you have to give them things like toys to keep them occupied and stuff like that. Make sure their cages are cleaned. There's no like bear poop or straw or anything, so you gotta clean everything all up. Now, one day is just another day waking up, getting the kids ready so they could assist and, help take care of the animals and stuff. Now, the husband, Michael, had left for the day. This was October 4th of 2009, so this would be a Sunday. Now, the family, Kelly and her kids, kind of went out there to complete these tasks. As always, she started with Teddy's cage first. Now, Sunday was the main day that she would clean the cages and stuff. Every time she did her rounds, though, it was always his cage that she would clean first, right? So she'd go up and, talk to the bear and everything and get him going. Now, when they headed out, there was a neighbor, Scott Castone, and his kids were outside doing some random tasks in their yard. Now, they acknowledged one another, right? As neighbors do, like, hey, Scott. Hey, Kelly. How are you? Kelly's kids were hanging out on the porch just for the meantime. Kelly was taking over a wheelbarrow so she could scoop up Teddy's mess from his cage. His poop, old straw, etc., right? And then she would lay out some new stuff for him. So she had some dog food with her, and she scooped a shovel full out for the bear, and then this would give her some time to clean up the cage for him. And she wheelbarrowed all her stuff in. Teddy quickly went over, ate some of his food, and then he wandered over to the cage here to greet her, and he stood up on his hind legs. Now, when standing on their hind legs, black bears can reach heights of anywhere between 5 to 7 feet tall. But when they're on all four legs, black bears are about 2 to 3 feet height at the shoulder. Now, these actions didn't seem too out of the ordinary here, like he did shit like this all the time, right? He was a playful little dude. Some think that he started being a little bit weird here because it was hibernation time. Because black bears usually start their hibernation process around the end of October, early November. But Teddy was with the couple and he was contained since he was a cub, right? So they fed him. He never had to worry about his food. Maybe it was just his animal instinct kicking in, right? Like he wanted to go hibernate. Who knows? Perhaps he was just a little bit restless, right? There's lots of possibilities on it. So there was some articles here that made mention that he flipped his shit because he wanted to be free, or that he wanted to go hibernate in the wild. His natural instincts were kicking in, shit like that perhaps. But I kind of looked some of this up here. Like, since he was enclosed and spoiled since birth, he had an endless supply of food. He didn't have to hunt and stuff like that, right? But I mean, maybe that's what he wanted to do. But what the hibernation is influenced by is like factors like, say, food availability, the change in temperature, and the reproduction status. Because female bears with cubs will typically stay in their dens longer than the males. And how long they hibernate depends solely on each individual bear. Some may sleep a few months, some may sleep longer than that. It just depends on the environment that they're in. Now, if they're in a warmer climate, it's like a few months. In colder climates, it's anywhere between 6 to 7 months that they would hibernate. Now, bears hibernate to conserve energy during periods of food scarcity. But this bear had no food shortage at all. It was a steady supply since maybe he was just being a fucking bear, He wanted to be free, perhaps. I don't know. Bears do pace around a lot, though. Usually when they're restless and stuff. But some will just sit there in the cage and they'll just relax, right? They'll pop over different spots throughout the day. Mostly staying in a couple spots and shit like that. But I mean, some think that he was looking for an escape too. Maybe he wasn't, right? But if a bear does start pacing around, pacing can be a behavioral indicator of poor welfare. But I mean, everybody and their fucking dog said this whole place was just fucking tip top. So, repetitive pacing. I'll give you an example here of pacing. So, the repetitive pacing behavior is actually exhibited by many species, mostly in zoos or other places that they're held. And sometimes this happens with carnivores with large home ranges, such as bears. And he did have a pretty big place to roam around in. But there is currently no standardized method to quantify pacing, which makes cross-institutional analysis of the causal factors and intervening measures pretty fucking challenging. So back to it here. So by now, Kelly had removed a bit of straw waste out of the cage and into the wheelbarrow. So she got a good pile scooped up. She placed the shovel against the wall like we always do, and then started to take out the soiled straw. And as she came out, Teddy just got pissed. He had a little bit of food left, and he noticed her movement. He started charging right after her, and, kind of thought that she was like a threat to him and his food. Now, sometimes animals will protect their food, or they'll have food aggression or resource guarding. This is actually a defensive reaction, where an animal becomes aggressive when they're approached while eating, or when food is perceived as a threat, and the animal tries to protect what's valuable to them, which is their own food, right? So they're going to protect their food from being stolen by other animals or whatnot. So at this time, the bear didn't see the loving lady that always took care of him, right? He actually perceived her as a threat. So sometimes when this happens, like bears or dogs or what have you, whatever animals having the issues, they'll either gobble up the food really fast, they'll stop eating when they're approached, they'll stare you down as you get closer to their food, or they'll take like big bites and run away with the food in their cheeks. In this case, he chose to go on a fucking defensive, perceived her as a threat, and took charge in her direction. Funny thing though, like Teddy never shown any aggression towards anyone prior to him running at her. By the time she noticed, he was already on top of her. All 350 to 400 fucking pounds of him. His massive claws were digging into her, crushing her pretty much is what he was doing, right? Like, you got 400 fucking pound of bear on you. It's gonna knock the air out of you. So it's gonna make her hard to breathe. So she was definitely gasping for air. But she did yell the words, "Help," just as he took his jaws and bit into her shoulder. By now, all the horrific screams, all the growls, they could be heard by the neighbor Scott. His kids actually seen all of this too, right? Even her children that were on the porch. They witnessed the whole attack. Her two kids ran for the house because the door to the cage was open, right? So he could walk anywhere, right? He could come right out of there, no problem. And Scott made a dash for his pistol. He loaded it up and ran towards the bear cage. When he got there, he noticed that she was completely motionless. She was all torn up from his claws, his bites. The fucking bear completely mauled her. And he was still on top of her at this time. He did hear Scott, and he noticed that he had come up, and then began to move towards him after killing Kelly, who was now covered in blood and pretty much unrecognizable. She was actually dead in under a minute. So the bear was getting ready to charge at him now. So what Scott did, raised his pistol, aimed the gun, and fired at the bear, charging directly at him. The first hit went into the abdomen. Second round hit him in the neck. That was pretty crucial. Scott just kept firing at the bear. Eventually, the bear went down with a sickening thud. So he had fired a total of 5 rounds. 2 went into the bear's head. Now the bear was now on the ground, breathing slowly, and then he passed away. By now, 911 had been called by Scott's little ones after hearing the gunshots. So the paramedics and the police, they rolled onto the scene. Kelly Ann Walz was 37 years old, and her and Teddy were pronounced dead at the scene. So this means a person has died and their injuries or their condition are so severe that resuscitation isn't possible. Then they're pronounced dead at the location where the event occurred. Now, the bear that was once tamed and unfeared had run amok. He killed the lovely lady who fed him, who homed him, cared for him. That sucks, man. I mean, no matter how tame they may seem, wild animals will always be wild animals, you know? And though bear attacks in captivity are rare, they still happen every year all over the country. On average, in the United States, there's about 2 to 3 fatal grizzly bear attacks per year, with non-fatal attacks being more common, averaging about 30 to 40 annually. Now, Kelly's family had a closed casket funeral service for her, and she left behind 2 kids and a devoted husband. Her family and the church family are just all broken up about this, mourning the loss of Kelly. And as we wind on down here, folks, the Pennsylvania Game Commission, they had looked into this licensing stuff. So they said the husband, Michael, had long-standing permits to keep, sell, and display exotic animals, but the permits expired in June of 2008. But a lapsed permit is actually considered like a summary violation, as they call it. So this is similar to like a traffic ticket. It wouldn't have resulted in the removal of the animals or anything like that. Now, Jerry Feeser, this guy's like a commission spokesman. He said the most recent state inspection in 2007 did not turn up any problems, nor were there any discovered when the Game Commission investigators returned after the attack on that Sunday night. Kelly's neighbor, Scott Castone, his house is probably about a football field away. He said there's never been a problem in the decade that he's lived there. He said the animals were all safely locked up in their pens. And Scott said that he even fed the bear popcorn on occasions. Now, Castone said that the family kept the animals as pets. They did not sell them, although Michael actually had a permit to do so. Now, one time, we mentioned like the African lion, the cougar, the jaguar, tiger, bear, leopards, all those. All of these guys were on the property in Ross Township. There was actually a couple serval cats on the site as well. So he said as of Monday, only the mountain lion and the tiger remained. Castone said the rest of the animals had died from old age. And furthermore, he told the police investigators that the bear was atop of Kelly when he had arrived with the handgun. He kind of clambered off of her and then was looking at him, and he was about to leave his cage when he opened fire. Scott said he got off her to come out to me, and this is what he told the press. He also made a comment, I did what anyone would do. It was pretty much self-defense. He said that she loved the animals and took care of them. And this other dude, Tim Conway, this guy's like information and education supervisor with the Game Commission. He said the owners of wild animals usually have a 2-section cage that allows them to isolate the animal behind a locked gate while they clean the other part. He says why this woman had chose to go into the same area that the bear was in is beyond me. It's a fatal mistake. He said these things are not tame animals, they're wild animals. So he said that, the whole thing's been on the property for like 20 years. Even the previous owner here, there was a guy, Marshall Eldridge. He actually toured it before the Walzes took it over in the 90s. Eldridge used to worry about the animals escaping because he had like children and stuff, right? But I mean, the cages were sturdy. Now, there are more than 100 wildlife permits statewide, a number that has dropped significantly in recent years as Game Commission regulations have been more heavier and whatnot. But now, like, people need, I believe, 2 years experience of handling wild animals to obtain a letter of approval from the municipality before they can receive a permit. So, a lot more stricter rules, right? But at that time, I guess the stricter rules didn't apply to the existing permit holders like Waltz. And there was a lot that went on in this tale here. Like, it just sucks that police had to go to the home at the 7200 block of Dogwood Lane. But hopefully some folk now realize that keeping exotic creatures can sometimes be fatal. And lastly, my twisted friends, naming a bear Teddy doesn't fucking make it one. I hope you guys enjoyed this tale. Have a wonderful day.
Twisted Tales.